Hello. It's Writing Wednesday. It is it's October, and we're getting into the autumn book season. People are finally settling down to work. People are, school's back in session. Getting ready to see Maddy Smith tonight. She has a new book, The Year of the Monkey. And I like anything Maddy Smith does. I think that she is the real artist that we all need to kind of absorb her through the pores, see what she's doing, see why these books are so intriguing, why the way she lives is very much, she lives like a pilgrim. She's always looking for the source of inspiration, the contact with the artists of the past, contact with herself. The Year of the Monkey is her life, her journals in 1 year. It's supposed to be very associational, and as anybody knows who's been watching these, that working by association is where you get to the heart of who you are and what you do. Just Kids, her first book that won the National Book Award, was a memoir of her becoming an artist and her relationship with the photographer Robert Mapplethorpe, and it's really a picture of emerging artists and what it's like to live in kind of a fire hose situation of complete immersion in art and literature and music. And that's the cauldron in which artists are formed. The second book, M Train, is about memory, loss of her husband, travel, and this pilgrim self comes out where she wants to visit the sites of this and that, and will go to great lengths to go there. The third book, Devotion, this is the fourth one, The Year of the Monkey, in which two very important people to her died, Sam Shepard and her brother. And it continues this interaction with the world as a poet, as an artist. Seeming random, but looking for the sources of contact. She's 69, and she's living like an artist. I mean, it is always inspirational. So I was, hi Sylvia, I was very interested. One of you watching wanted to see if I would do a talk about NaNoWriMo. And I don't know if everybody knows what NaNoWriMo is. It is the National Novel Writing Month, which is November. It works through a website, nanowrimo.org. And the idea of it is to write 50,000 words of your novel in a month. And it tracks your words. You can log in and track just like a Fitbit. And people love NaNoWriMo. Why? Why do people love a month set aside to write their novel, or to write 50,000 words of a draft, if you're going to be realistic about it, or 50,000 words of anything, or to spend a month immersing yourself in your work? And I think this is probably the best use of NaNoWriMo, and why it is so popular is people who are, say, living in the multiverse of demands on their life, and have somehow gotten carried fairly far down that stream, can find a rock to kind of push themselves against and say, this is going to be my month, this is what I'm going to be doing, and really declaring themselves in a way that they have not been able to clear space for themselves in regular life. I think that in that sense, it is hugely valuable because it helps people protect the space of writing life. And it also challenges them. What is it like if they put pedal to the metal? Many people are really afraid to see where it would go if they really tried. It's so easy to say, oh, if I really tried, I would write, a great book. Or if I really tried, I could, do this, or I could do that. Well, this is a challenge to say, what if you really tried? Let's see it. Let's really try for a month. Not too scary. Let's really try. And, there's all kinds of feelings about NaNoWriMo. There is a publisher, somebody who works for a publisher, who wrote to me and said, it's my job to sift through thousands of submissions to find novels good enough for the publisher I work for to put out. He absolutely, or she absolutely, hates NaNoWriMo. It's the worst thing to happen to literature. What we need is a way to encourage writers to spend 3 or 4 years meticulously writing masterpieces, not 30 days churning out pablum. Absolutely. Okay. This is from the publisher's point of view. From what can a writer learn from this? It's very, most people know. I'd say 95% of the people who are doing NaNoWriMo understand that this is a jump start. You're not going to live your life with the guys with the paddles coming in and going boom, and bringing you back to life. It's a big deal. It's unsustainable, but it can start your heart again. So very few people think that something that is produced in a month should be sent to a publisher. I'm sorry that some people do it. I'm sorry that some people think that amassing 50,000 words or 70,000 words or 100,000 words, say if they keep doing it, means you have a novel. That just means that you're producing the cloth from which the novel will be fashioned, right? You're weaving the cloth. You can do it that way, but you cannot create a novel. Is not a piece of, a Victorian gown is not a piece of cloth. There's going to be a lot more going on. On the other hand, when people have wanted to write a book for a long time and people sort of know what their subject matter is, what they'd like to explore, it is a way to take a fence and put it up around a discrete piece of property, of concentration property, and say, this is what I'm going to be doing with my November, is NaNoWriMo. And there's a lot of support for it. There is a tracker, word tracker, for people who like to have a gold star on their chart. There are pep talks. I myself have written a pep talk. A lot of famous writers have written pep talks. So you sign in, you give yourself a phony username. I wouldn't. A lot of people are on there. And, so you give yourself kind of some sort of a handle. And there are pep talks, probably 30, 40 pep talks on there, which there's one each session. So or maybe 2 each session that are released, like after 2 weeks and one after 3 weeks, something like that. And I see, all kinds of people have done them. Minjin Lee did one, I did one. And it's mostly encouraging you to keep going, maybe a little tip here and there. I love them. I love them. I love NaNoWriMo because I didn't come up through a program. I taught myself to write, learning here and there, taking bits and pieces. I really felt I was in the outer planet, so there was nothing like this when I was learning to write. And I know that I would have embraced it. And so rather than thinking of it as marching through and getting out, 50,000 words that you're going to be well on your way to a novel, I would say just use it as a declaration of what you're going to do with your month of November. And there's prep. There's like a prep calendar that's going on right now where you can think about, let's see, I have it up here on my computer, but I don't know how to turn it around very easily. They have NaNoWriMo Prep, which is started in September, where people were being asked to think about developing the story idea, a week of creating character, constructing a detailed plot or outline. I'm not hot on that, but these are tools. You can use them or not. Build a world, organizing your life for writing. I don't know what these are. I haven't gone into them. And then manage your time, which is probably a reason 80% of the people are doing NaNoWriMo, is that they're trying to get back in control of their writing life. What is it like to completely dedicate yourself for a month? Most people can't go on a writing retreat. They just have to declare themselves for a limited period of time, and this is it. November. Maybe it's because November is the last month before the holidays. So people are feeling like, oh my God, I wanted to really work on this book this year, but it's November already, So if I want to work on the book this year, I better get on it in November before the holidays oppress. It's also a good I think of it more as a slingshot, that it's an accelerator. It gets you launched into your project so that when real life comes back, you have more momentum. And a body in motion tends to remain in motion. So it gets you into motion. But here's the question of quantity versus quality. The fact that it's asking for a certain number of words. You aim for a certain number of words. That I'm not into that. I believe that writing is a conversation between quality and quantity, back and forth, and this, it could be just encouragement to just go all out and just look a bunch of words onto a page. There's something to be said for that, but more is not always more. And I'm somebody who is a maximalist, so I don't worry quite so much about the 50,000 words as the dedication of time, and really sinking that time in there and getting some movement for sure. A little bit of what was my pep talk about? Let's see. My pep talk was basically about, let's see if I can find it, was about what to do when you hit a block, as you're like steaming ahead in your NaNoWriMo, just trying to pile up the pages and figuring out where the story really goes. You can work on story really well in NaNoWriMo. It's hard to get language, it's hard to get metaphor, it's hard to dig down and get what things mean. That has to be done in a little more leisure, but you can certainly lay down some concrete here. So my pep talk had been about what to do when you hit a wall, and my suggestion had been make trouble for your character. If nothing is happening with your character, find the thing that the worst thing that could happen to them, the worst choice they could make, the worst thing that could befall them, and have it happen. Then you're winding up the little spring that will cause things to happen in your story. There are wonderful pep talks. Thanks, Valerie. She liked mine. Thank you. So let's see what people asked me about NaNoWriMo. Sylvia wants to know, can you answer this? I have 2 ideas for a novel and want to choose one to focus on before I start the novel writing series in January. Should I take Nano to write them out as 2 short stories, or just choose one and write a novel draft? I've done Nano many times, so I'm okay with being flexible about what I do. Okay, you have 2 ideas for a story. I wouldn't wait, I mean, why don't you write one of them now and see if you like it? I mean, I had an idea for a story, looking at the next novel. Something it was a short, and seeing if it had it in it to go into a full story. And I've started writing it, and I find I do not want to write it. I do not want to write the story. So there you go. Now it's out of the running. I would start now. But if you wanted to do Nano with one of or both of them, you certainly have time to write both of them. And notice which one draws you, and then abandon the other one. I would say, if you don't wait till Nano, but if you can't get started until then prep them both, and you might find yourself even in the prep attracted to one over the other. So Andy said, 3rd year as an ML, that's a motivational liaison. And this they didn't even have when they started. They have actual real-time writing meetups in like all these cities, internationally even, where people can come and write in community, and some people who are isolated the way I had been when I started out, just to go in to some coffee house and see a bunch of people writing would be super gratifying. So I think that's on the list, that people can type in their zip code or their town, and find out where these meetups are. So that's very cool. This is somebody who is a volunteer. So NaNoWriMo has become more than just you sitting in your desk. So you can take it on any level that you like. You can use it to meet community. You can use it to just work on your book. You can use it in several different ways, it looks like. Let's see. There's some more questions here. So there's the defense of literature problem here that we started out with Brett. This is a big question, and an interesting one is, what is writing for? Who is it for? What is it for? Do we, is it enough? Some people, it just brings pleasure to their lives to write, and to write a little better helps them create something that pleases them. I think that's the rock bottom of all writing, is it pleases the writer. Then there's another level, is will this be refined into something that is more of an artistic product, is that it is more of a work of art. Is there artistry involved? Does the writer know that there are elements of artistry which they might have to learn to get better? Some people don't care. However, I don't know that those people should really be thinking about writing for publication. When I was starting out, I didn't know the difference. So I was sending out really half-baked work and getting rejected. Now you can self-publish, and then you can end up with a box of books that your friends might want to read, or your family. But so there's a when I was in college, I had a political science teacher, wonderful teacher, who named Stephen Kapsch. And Stephen Kapsch posited what we called the Kapsch continuum, which is like a vector, which means a solid point on the end and an arrow. So it starts in one place and then it just goes. And the Kapsch continuum was from duty, which was that solid point at the bottom, and then the arrow went up like diagonal. So it was the continuum from duty to aspiration, and there is no upper end to aspiration. So there's the workmanlike thing, the table that holds up, and their duty is fulfilled, and then how high up on that arrow of aspiration do you want to go? So what was the turning point that moved me from half-baked to full-on? There was no turning point. It was a continuum. I just didn't know what I didn't know, and gradually I learned. And then, as many of you know, I got a rejection that said, good enough story, but what's unique about your sentences? And then I realized that there was a huge sector of the literary endeavor that I didn't even know about. I didn't even think about, is form, structure, voice, the beauty of the sentence, one word after another, how you arrange a sentence, how style evolves from the sentence, experimenting with forms, doing something interesting. That was something somebody had to point out that I didn't have that. I hadn't thought about that. And then I learned to do it. So that's Laura Jo's question. Yeah. So I sometimes it's somebody else who challenges you, and you can't get that without showing it to people. There are things that you can't do in that vacuum of just self-creation, because you won't know what you don't know. It's very helpful to read books that are more difficult than you would ordinarily maybe read for your own entertainment, and really look at what they do, look at how they're put together. Read something formally difficult, read something where the voice is very strong and interesting. You can learn from your books, but there's no substitute from getting people who are good commenting on your work and showing you by their generosity, sometimes like this editor at the journal that rejected the story but told me where to look for my difficulty. So I would definitely do NaNoWriMo if this was me. I might, if I wasn't taking a big vacation, a big trip in November, I might even do it myself. But I'm still writing stories. I'm still looking for my book. what the next book will be. I mean, I've been working on this book for over a decade, the two books, Chimes and Revolution of Marina M. And, you know, I don't really want to, not quite ready to run a marathon yet, but I'm thinking about what I want to do that with. So playing with short stories and stuff. Let's see, what other questions do you have for me? Here's another one who is had an email from a man whose 10-year-old son had written a thriller and wanted me to copy edit and proofread and help me with a bio for Amazon. A 7-year-old selling his thriller on Amazon, and he suggested that the child should find a teacher and you know, not even venture into that. Absolutely, you know, I encourage children and teenagers to get your head off of publication and into the possibilities of creation, because that's what's amazing, and that's what it all comes from. It's not about publication, it's about what are you creating, and often that's about cultivation of the self, which is going to be doing the creating, feeding that artist. I have a whole YouTube video. I'm putting all of these Writing Wednesdays up on YouTube, Janet Fitch's Writing Wednesday, so it's easier to find. And I have one about feeding the artist inside. And in a way, this NaNoWriMo is helpful, and in a way it is the opposite of feeding, because it doesn't give you time to truly feed the writer, which is reading challenging work, wandering around like a poet, and really trying to let the world affect you the way a poet does, looking to be moved, looking for the meaning. I saw something the other day. I saw I have these pomegranates that usually bear pretty heavily, and it didn't bear this year. And it's like, I felt really bad because it had a lot of flowers. And then I thought, oh my God, you know, the bees didn't come. You know, are we to the point that there are no bees to fertilize them? So these trees didn't bear any fruit. And I was feeling how disappointed the trees must be to be able to carry those fruit and not have the lover come and pollinate them, the bees. I was thinking about that, and then the other day I was watering and I noticed, oh my God, there is fruit. I was standing inside. The fruit isn't on the outside of the tree anymore. The fruit is hanging inside that outer layer of boughs. And to me, that was a metaphor for thinking that something isn't coming to fruition, hasn't come to fruition, and just not seeing the green within the green, not being able to notice the ripening fruit there because it's still green. And to me, that was a metaphor for something that's going on in personal life. And I know I'll be able to use it in my writing life as a metaphor. Well, you don't get that when you're trying to pound 50,000 words out in NaNoWriMo. So, you know, you can do that, or you can take November and use it to intensify your writing practice and feeding the artist and living as an artist and working all the time and sleeping next to your computer or next to your, it used to be next to your typewriter, much more aesthetic, but we live in the computer age. But what it's like to have declared that space for yourself, I think that is the ultimate pleasure of NaNoWriMo. And you know, as far as publication, I think people have to distinguish between, I'm going to say hobbyist or amateur, not in the pejorative, but in the sense of, I mean, I paint. I'm a lousy painter. I stink. People see me painting and they come over to see what I'm doing. And it's like, that? But I'm not painting for others. I'm painting for myself. It is fabulous to have something that I don't have to be good at, that I can just play with and not be so terribly serious about as I have to about my art form. So there's nothing wrong with people who just enjoy doing something. Actually, they enjoy it more than people who do it professionally. Or who are super ambitious. I have new cards that are coming, should be coming this week. I'm going to Japan, and you always want to have a business card, right? They take it very seriously, and I love printing and paper and stuff. And my business card on the back is a quote from Thomas Mann, who says, a writer is someone for whom writing is more difficult than it is for other people. And that's true. To be an amateur, if you just want to tell this story, some fantasy thing or personal story, and just want to just open up the gates and let it out, and to have that out in your world, if not in the world, I don't see anything less than wonderful about that. If you are, on the other hand, if you are writing for publication, if you want to have join the conversation that is literature, you might consider using that month to ratchet up your practice and throw yourself into high gear, and hopefully the gears keep turning for a while. How do you write a novel in a month? How do you, I had a friend who was teaching at 12 weeks, write a novel in 12 weeks. Well, nobody's going to write a novel in 12 weeks. A Simonon maybe, but a little mystery or something. But you could certainly, write a short story in a month. You could maybe write a short story and write another short story, or start one. I always like to think of, if you think of your novel and you want to really get some traction in a first draft, say in a limited time span, say you go on vacation, or you get a residency and you don't want to waste it, or you have your National Novel Writing Month coming up and you're really going to do something that will be valuable for yourself. Instead of thinking of writing a novel in a month, or even a first draft in a month, or the first 80 pages in a month, you might, which is, go ahead, but another idea might be to think of the 12 scenes that absolutely would have to be in that book, and write those 12 scenes, or even 6 scenes. Write those, and then they become like the posts. And then between them, you can string the rest of the book. That would be a very interesting way to use NaNoWriMo. Say I wanted to write a novel about world. Oh, I don't want to give away some of my things I'm working on. But say I wanted to write a book about a love affair, where people, it's about the adjustment of illusions. I would know that I would need them to meet. A scene of meeting. I'd need to have some idea of who the people are, so that what kind of stress does meeting put on each of them? So there's a lot of character work first, because it's not just any two people who meet. It's important who is meeting. So then I have a scene, I have to decide who is our protagonist. Who are we following? Whose point of view? Am I going to alternate him, her, him, her? Am I going to be omniscient? Am I going to be her or him? Then I know that, so I know that they need to meet. I know that there needs to be some kind of a scene of the early relationship. And how do they get past all the thorns that people, you know, the armor that people maybe put up, if that's their thing. You know, how do they slip by each other's defenses to actually come together? And then, you know, I would know I need a breakup scene. I know I need maybe a problem that comes in from the outside. Maybe somebody loses their housing, or somebody gets pregnant, or something like that. And work out my posts and then develop them. That's an idea. But I'm not an outliner myself. Every day I wish I was, and the signpost thing is very attractive to me. So here's a question. What about using it for rough drafts? Yes, that's what people normally would use it for, is making some progress on a draft. There is a bunch of prep things already up on the site so that you can start thinking about your character and, you know, getting a sense of where you want to go. So when you're ready, when it starts, you'll already have done a lot of the groundwork. I would do it, definitely have some idea of expanding on ideas you already have. Usually people have a notion of what they want. They don't want to just stare at a blank page come November 1st. I think most people, 98% of people, know that you're not going to just punch out 50,000 words and send it to some poor publisher. That it's not going to be, it's just you're making the cloth. You haven't even sewn a stitch into it. Somebody, here's Pinar, says, I've always used Nano for drafting or even researching and getting ideas down. Yes, it's silly that you can think you can produce a publishable thing in a month. Yes, or start researching now in preparation so that when the ball drops on November 1st, you already have done the prep work. So check out their prep stuff. It's at the bottom. Their Prep 101 or whatever they call it, to start thinking about your characters and what their problem is, what kind of stress they're going to put on each other, what the characters' stress points are that the situation is going to put pressure on, because we've talked about character-driven work, if you're going to do character-driven work. So this is a way of, Pinar is saying, it's a way of allowing yourself to play in the sandpit before you solidify and commit to a structure. I think playing with structure is really interesting. And if you look at, there's a really interesting review today, Rebecca Mackay, on Zadie Smith's new short story collection. And her belief is that, especially in short stories, that people don't explore form enough. They don't think of interesting form, interesting possibilities. So I could see, choosing a form and just going ahead and playing with it, not even thinking that you're actually going to use that for something. But most people doing NaNoWriMo seem more purposeful, and it's like if you've done your playing, then the purposeful side of it is, would probably be super useful. But, there's a sense that I get that people don't do enough prep work in themselves of training the artist first and doing your notebooks and your observations and really seeing the world as an artist does before they start building a palace. They haven't, done the soil compaction and, all the prep work. So it's interesting. The idea of playing with a structure in that month is really interesting. I like that, and I like to use their pre-tober stuff for research. Big ideas, themes, characters. I usually don't do themes before I've written. I think theme is something that comes out of the writing, that I don't like it to see it imposed on work. I'm into neck down fiction, that people write out of what comes out of who they are, and then the themes coalesce. You'll see the themes towards, when you've already got a draft or two and you start to see the themes emerging. But definitely character, you got to start with character. You got to figure out where things are going to be. If you need to research, it's a good time so that you are ready. So Amy Taine, that is a really good idea. Let's see what we got here. I mean, you can use it for exercises, but I have a feeling that the people who are attracted to NaNoWriMo are ready to just dive into their novels. I'm just, just thinking about think of it as a loom and you're getting that cloth out. But that, knowing full well that that is not going to be the full extent of it. So I think if we have no more questions, that's a really good place to stop. So NaNoWriMo is a really fun thing. Even if you're not doing it, National Novel Writing Month. Right. If you're thinking of it, even if you're not thinking of it, it's free to go on and make an account. And then you can at least read the pep talks that writers have given. And if you choose to do it, I imagine, think of how many thousands of people are doing it at the same time. It's like meditating with other people. It's going to raise the vibrational level. So always be a rebel and do whatever you want. Yes, Amy, I would certainly say that. And just to let you know, I am collecting all of these Writing Wednesdays on my new YouTube channel, Janet Fitch's Writing Wednesday. So please subscribe. I'm going to be putting everything over there so you can always find things at the drop of a hat. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next Wednesday.